you everyone for being here today. We have people still joining, and a number of folks are indicating they'd like to receive copies of this afterwards. We will be distributing the webinar by email to all folks who have registered. So please do look forward to that. We absolutely welcome any questions as we go through today. We had one question received earlier about the tech stack recommendation. So we'll certainly talk a little bit about technology today. But if you have any questions, feel free to post them in the chat and we'll watch for them and respond throughout. So please don't hesitate to do that. The reason we wanted to do this particular webinar in our Post and Playbook series is because we get a lot of questions from folks about technology and analytics, but even more sort of how to bring it all together, if you will. And, that comms and business development working together questions, and literally how to practically make that happen at your firms and organizations. And so we wanted to kind of walk you through the slides, which are the actual slides we use for some clients, and we've sort of obviously cleaned them up and made them more generic, but you're going to see actual materials that we've been a part of creating and are creating for clients pretty regularly moving forward at this point. Andrew, did you have any introductory things to say?
Just think that, one of the things that I'm asked about on a regular basis is how do you measure the result or the value of your communication strategy, particularly your PR and your media relations? Or an attorney may come to you and say, like, why should I take the time to write this article? Like, what is the value of it? And I think that here it's what we're looking at is a complete process and system to really, maximize the value of your communication strategy and show the value and really take the data that is available to us and really show that measurement. One of the things that can be frustrating as a business development professional is when you think that, things might seem like random acts of PR. We don't want to be doing random acts of PR. We want to do strategically important, communications that's going to, show results and move the needle for your organization. So I think that, what you'll see here is some processes and programs and really just, actions you can take to deliver there on that level.
All right. Well, when you are trying to be that content strategist rather than simply one of the roles perhaps on this list, the point here is to bring it all together, like I said. And so all of you know about all these. I just kind of wanted to run through a few thoughts just to make sure we keep them all top of mind. And the deck will be individual points along the overall communications ecosystem or timeline even that you'll see today. We sort of talk a lot about client relationship building. That's the core of any content campaign. We all sort of look at client alerts maybe as the central narrative piece on some of that. But many firms are sort of trying to figure out this barrage of information that they're sending out, whether or not it's actually working for them. So, certainly starting with those pieces that you're distributing on your own channels first. And then market differentiation, more and more we get requests and we'll sort of immediately now respond, well, what's the market? And so when we think about that, for example, if somebody was to come to us and say, we'd like to go after healthcare in the New York market, we sort of say immediately, well, do you have a target list? And do you know the size of that market and how many buyers of legal services? And more often than not, the answer is no. But in the development of any sort of communications campaign or strategy, it's really important to understand what the market looks like and then how you can be differentiated in that market. And so it might just be to 6 people that you want to be differentiated to. And so it's a completely different strategy if that's the case. Reputation management, obviously, for a firm in these competitive times is critically important. And obviously, buyers of services care about a lot of things beyond the advice, the legal advice or the legal information you provide. And so Your reputation management is a lot of different things all at once. And so by also putting it all together, you can sort of do many different things at the same time. Business development, certainly working really closely with that team. If you're a comms professional or if you're a business development professional working the other direction, you're going to see today that we recommend a monthly meeting with the people in the department so that when you use your creative strategies, you use your tech stack, that it does take the commitment to the sales meeting once a month, or the business development meeting that brings everyone together to sort of continually refine, measure, and improve and advance those strategies. Recruitment and retention, the big one for most folks um, today is looking at things like DE&I and changes to firms' policies and procedures. That falls a little bit more below down in crisis. But recruitment and retention can also be your lateral strategies. And, we look at a lateral strategy also as something that should be looked at over a longer term. We recommend always a 1-year lateral strategy on comms for folks. So they're bringing on board, but then driving that out through internal comms and presentations across practice groups, and then measuring those results for those individuals through gap analyses and cross-selling, which rely on comms to get all of that done. Internal alignment for us encompasses everything from a firm's strategic plan and how we as business development comms professionals need to bring those plans to life. They're making a multi-million-dollar growth goal announcement and following through on that over an extended multi-year period, to leadership comms at the practice group level and driving the sales process, or all the way down to HR and employee communications, and working with support staff on how they can really help drive comms forward and making sure databases are up to date and all those kinds of great things. And then obviously I mentioned earlier crisis preparedness. Andrea, did you want to add anything on this list?
Well, I think no, but I think as we move forward, what I think we're focused on here, and Dave, you can jump in and anything I missed, but I think we're really looking here at client relationship building, market differentiation, and business development. All those other pieces are also intertwined, but those are really the 3 things I think that we're really focused on. And when you look at that, we're in everything that you're doing. I'm sure you've heard this all the time, right? There's the things you have to do to compete, your basic tasks. And then you have, your value added activities. But here we're really looking, what are the differentiating actions that you can do that are going to help you take a step beyond your competitors and really make a difference? And that's what I think this is. And so much of this is execution. Like it is 95% execution. You probably won't hear a whole lot of stuff that you haven't heard before in some way. Maybe hopefully you haven't heard it packaged together all together like this. But the idea though is like, how do you execute? What do you put in place to make sure that you can do it and really differentiate yourself from your competitors?
So, do you want me to describe this?
Yes.
Okay. So this is actually an infographic which really lays out on a visual aspect how all the pieces that are available to you that you are trying to bring together. And when we talk about filling out the different templates that you're going to see today, as a team, as a department, and bringing those, as you can see in the very center, to a monthly analytic report, from which you all can apply your own analysis to refine that strategy. All of the tactics at the immediate second row center circle are like the navy blue. Those are your standard tactics. And, we like to sort of talk about, we only have one technology here, JD Supra, because I think that that is one of the most commonly understood technologies that provides return readership data for you. And it's an example, and there are many others, but the tactics there in Navy. And then the outer circle is really more where the analysis and creative really does need to come into play. And so I think we oftentimes will stop at the Navy circles, and we need to sort of go one step out a little bit further. And if we can do that and we can continue to bring that all together in a data collection and analysis way, then we can really advance forward and make database decisions when we do refine. So you'll see this infographic a couple times today, Andrea.
Yeah, and I think, if you really want to know, like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And I'll let, Dave answer that question too. But I think from my perspective, the problem we're trying to solve is twofold. One, it is you have a lot of data and information available to you, generally speaking, when you are in-house at a law firm. But making it actionable is the challenge, right? Because oftentimes you're so busy, you don't even really get to look at it. Like, you're like, oh yes, I'm really excited. I have all of these tools that give me this data, but making it actionable is a real challenge when you're in the weeds of the day-to-day work. And again, this is where we're getting to that differentiation point I just made earlier. And so what this is really, so that's problem number one. The second problem we're trying to solve for is making sure that your communication strategy and your marketing campaigns are driving revenue growth, right? So that it's directly linked to business development, so that you can really show the return on your investment in your communication strategy. So I would say that's the twofold problem we're trying to solve. Dave, anything you would add to that from, like, what problem are we trying to solve here?
No, no, that's really it. The implementation is not only what you might think in terms of distribution channels or open rates and things like that, but the implementation is in the sharing, the collection and sharing and analysis of that information. And so we are providing that one step backwards today to hopefully help you do that.
Yeah. And I see this, like, graphic, and like Dave said, we're going to come back to it a few times, so you'll get to see it again. But I see it as, this is, using your data and analytics to build and refine your strategy. And we're going to incorporate the content. You're going to see us do that, the PR and the business development. And then you're going to look at your integrated data, your KPIs, and you're going to refine your strategy. So it's like, kind of, even though it's one circle, to me, it's like little endless loops around. Like, you're always coming back and continuing to refine the strategy. And then it leads to, as we mentioned, to that bringing your whole team together to really action and take part, so you understand where the priorities are and how you're refining the strategy and moving it forward on a monthly basis. So before we dive in, because we're going to show you what some of the data sets look like with this process, there's a lot of data that you could look at. And so I wanted to kind of look at it from a high up level about the type of data, because, and we actually had a question I'm going to answer in just a second, because each of you has a different level of data that is available to you in your role at your firm. And you can do this without every single piece of data we're going to show you, because we're going to give you kind of like a huge list. But you could do it with a subset, and we'll talk through that as we walk through the data. But really the key things we're going to look at is, the top clients, your top matters, a gap analysis, and then the market, your industries and your geography. So at the highest level, that's what we're working with. And you can group it on multiple levels, which we're going to show you, by practice, by industry, by attorneys, by clients. But really what you want to understand are, what are your primary revenue drivers, right? And how can you expand that? Or do you need to differentiate your revenue drivers? What is the source of your most profitable work? Those are the two things you really want to understand. And then one of the questions we got in advance was, for smaller firms that have minimal data, what are the essential systems needed to present ROI on marketing initiatives and BD activities? And so I think we're going to talk about that, and we're going to come back to it. But I wanted to just say that we hear you, and we want to make sure we answer that question. So we'll make sure to get back to that one when we talk about measuring return. Dave, I'll let you jump in.
All right. So, we recommend starting back with the financial research and analysis because it can immediately provide you with, addressing the 80/20 rule around, the top 20% of your clients could potentially drive a significant part of your revenue. And so in comms, we often sort of think our job is to create new clients. That's not always the case. But to understand what the current clients are really needing and quite frankly, clicking on and reading and asking for, it's really helpful to build a strong relationship with your financial team, so that you can create data-driven strategies, with them. Most big firms now have done a good job of asking where clients are coming from, and they have fixed a lot of categories and coding and all of that into their financial system. But you may need to make tweaks, or you may need to ask them to provide you information in a way that's different than they're used to provide it, for example. And so we really, really want you to start. The first form here is to just go sit with them and talk to them about what kind of information do they have, what kind of information can they show you. And throughout the day, you're going to see a blank column like you see here off to the right that gives you a place to sort of fill in, okay, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to decide to do a piece of content about what I have here. And so when you start to see, the top two matters or the top two industry matters, individual matters kind of, leaning towards a particular topic, well, maybe there's something there. Or if it grows over time, over a monthly, financial analysis basis, then you can respond to that growth. And so by getting something set up between you and the financial team, you can address the sort of attention economy, really with economic numbers. Um, and, a lot of people say, well, I might get pushback on this. And, we often say just start small, get what bit of information you're allowed to get to sort of prove your case and then go further. But hopefully this whole deck together could sort of show whoever you might need to communicate with while you're seeking this information.
So like we were talking about, you can start small. So we looked at it on the previous slide, at the practice group level. So if you're organized by practice group at your firm or by industry group, that is a great way to start looking at the information, is by those levels, especially if that's how your firm looks at P&L. But you can always start smaller than that, as Dave was saying. Like, you can look at it on an attorney basis. So perhaps you've been asked to work with a rising star, a new partner, or particularly lateral partners. This works the same way for them as well, right? Like, you have information on their anticipated book of business. So you have kind of a BD plan to start with, and hopefully they are transitioning in a couple of matters. So you have a starting point with, these are their largest matters, and this is how much revenue that's bringing in. And so that gives you a good place to start there. So again, you can start this small, and by understanding the things they're working on, or what the type of work they're going after, it helps you actually start to fill in that content column and go ahead and give them some ideas. Because oftentimes what we'll hear from lawyers is, well, I don't know what I would talk about, or like, this doesn't seem to fit for me. But you can come to them with ideas because you have information on their practice and the things that they're working on and what is driving revenue for the firm.
And I'll just, if I could add on the attorney one as we sort of move into client teams, if you understand that, and this is going to be perhaps low, but if you understand an individual attorney's billing requirement to be $1 million a year, and then if you can get a breakdown, say, a sort of large corporate matter covering a lot of different practice groups at 250, and they have two of those, and then they have two or three $100,000 clients, and that matter type is one or another, and then they have about eight small $25,000 a year matters. You can understand that practice and then write content, for example, to those larger, more sort of enterprise-wide representations, if you will, as well as doing sort of individual content campaigns aimed at driving a bunch of $25,000 matters that are going to help them fill up their book at a particular time of year because the clients may need that. And so there really is a way to look at the numbers to determine what content needs to be for them. And then you can show them that you're responding to that, and they're going to be much more motivated to participate. So the coaching business development side coming together with the content side. And then I'll go in here to the content teams. This is obviously a super exciting place to operate for any firm and for any professional like all of us. If you can really dig in on the client team side, all the way from, visiting and interviewing clients and asking them what kind of material needs to be presented to them from a content perspective. That's a pretty basic understanding, but it's super important to have this here because if you have one or two or more 10, 20 client teams cooking, they're really great examples of this overall process. It's one of the most advanced places typically for firms. The one we like to highlight here is the second to last column, which is the private client meeting. And so when you are coming up with the content topics and you think client alert or you think PR externally, oftentimes what's forgotten and what's unknown is that the client meeting offer, which is sort of saying to prospects or current clients, we know that you're probably facing this particular legal issue. We've spoken on this at conferences, we've written on this. We'd like to give you a private client meeting. And that is a direct sales meeting ask that people are doing at many, many firms across the country. And so if you have a sales team, you probably know that's happening. If you don't have a sales team, you should know that that is happening. And that's how aggressive folks are being with your clients. And so if you can produce a private client meeting that encompasses all the other content narrative, you're really going to step into this sort of proper sales moment that we're seeing today.
So if you are going to do one thing and you're not already doing it at your firm after you are listen on this webinar, it would be to do this. It would be to do a gap analysis. That would be my recommendation for you. A gap analysis is pretty simple. It just looks at your top clients. You can start with any number, start with the top 5 to make it easy. When I was in-house, we did the top 50 clients, and it looks at the services you offer across the board and where you are serving them and where you're not serving them. So again, it kind of depends on how you're set up. You don't have to be set up by practice groups to do a gap analysis. That does often make it easier if you're set up by practice group, but you're basically looking at each of the clients, the services you offer, identifying where you're currently offering them those services and where you're not. And then from there, you're going to dig in, right? And you're going to say, okay, well, we're never going to be able to offer them this service for whatever reason, right? And you maybe can go ahead and put that on hold. Don't worry about that. But then you can focus on the areas where you do have opportunities and where you can move it forward. Now, I will tell you that this to me is such a great opportunity and a win for your content strategy, because when I was in-house, and particularly when I was working with the tax practice at the firm I was at, we would often have clients, or sorry, not clients, we'd often have attorneys from other practices come in and say, we really want to work with your clients in the tax practice. Can you help introduce us, make those introductions? And oftentimes what I'd hear is, okay, well, give me something to send to the client. Give me something to start to make them familiar with you, to tell them about you. And sometimes we didn't have that ready to go. And so where the value here is, you can say, okay, we want to get corporate secretarial work from this client that we represent in tax. And you're going to have content that you can give to those partners on a regular basis so that they can talk to their client about it's giving them a calling card. And so to me, this is a really great way to encourage cross-servicing and cross-selling. So if there was like one thing, if you're not already doing it, a lot of firms do it already. There's one thing, but maybe you're not using it for your content strategy. So if there's one thing that you would take away from today, I think from my recommendation, it would be doing this gap analysis. Dave, anything you would add on the gap analysis?
Well, just supporting everything you said, this is probably the place where you can find revenue most immediately. A couple different things to say here. Obviously, laterals, this should be done in advance of bringing on any laterals to see what the integration opportunity is of multiple practices. The second thing I'll sort of say is by going to your bringing client teams back to the fold, if you go to your client teams and you go to your clients and say, listen, we're willing to produce a series of content for you that trains your legal department or trains whatever other departments in your companies you need, you're going to have an opportunity to fill in the gaps here. The third thing I'll say is we call it topic, but really on your side, on the BD side for folks that that work there, you're going to replace topic here with legal service. And so the topic in legal service that there's a gap in is where we write content to fill that gap and make sales and drive revenue. Okay, so this one we can actually sort of lean into the tech stack a tiny bit more here. And this, we're looking more at growth here and building on an industry, building on a practice. You know, we say to folks when we do PR and BD work, you could give us a list of 100, but you really only need to give us five, because we can only proceed and move forward in a sales meeting with a small number of folks at a time, typically, um, in specific fashion, and then more broader credentialing and reputation building for the larger list as we go. And so, an example of sales meeting stuff to share. When I was at Dorsey and Whitney, Sylvia Coulter, as you all maybe know her name, she sent me and other people on the team to sales training with Miller Hyman, where we learned to do large account sales and we learned to do blue sheeting on every single company one, two, three, four, five that you would see on the left. So we would conduct market research, we would research the names of the individuals, their titles, find out what they're responsible for, who actually already represented them, and then we would design the strategy for each of those folks, which is what you want to do here. And so just talking about the client, the tech stack, which you all are going to want to, surely ask about, and I'm sure you're asking anybody that will tell you what they're using. I wanted to just start the intro on that a little bit. First, I'll say the LMA Northeast just held their CMO panel, and there was three CMOs and an innovation consultant on the panel. All three CMOs used entirely different tech stacks, from simple Excel spreadsheets all the way up to Salesforce as a software. Most of them were in transition, trying to do different integrations and trying to bring not only how many emails did they get and was that populating their CRM, but literally what kind of market research can I find? So when we think of the tech stack, we think of 17 different tech sort of categories in a tech stack, starting with research and client intelligence through things like Bloomberg, Aptivio. They can literally tell you who's representing who and what they're representing them on. I mean, and there's just so many technologies in this ecosystem. There's no way that we can present them all today. We did get a couple requests before this from attendees. And we are going to go ahead and try to publish finally sort of a baseline ecosystem for tech stack. And then it goes down from research and client intelligence, it jumps down to CRM, AI, which is content writing and sort of production, marketing automation, email platforms, content market management systems, customer data management, client data, ad tech and paid media, web and marketing analytics, SEO, sales enablement tools, lead enrichment and more prospecting. So that's actually similar to research, sort of conversational marketing and social media, landing pages and form building, social media management, account-based platforms, which are sort of large account, understanding what's across an enterprise, and then ROI and tracking and measurement. And so there are many, many things to consider in your tech stack. Andrea, anything to say?
Well, I just was going to answer or give an answer to the question that came in, like what were the baseline things that you need to have as a small firm? And a lot of these tools are free. So um, the baseline you can look at, I would say, are your Google Analytics for your website. What are your most looked at pages and what is driving your traffic to your website? So you can get that through your Google Analytics. Whatever email, if you're using an email distribution program for your client alerts, whatever they are giving you for your readership numbers, that's the second thing that you should look at. And even your basic programs like Constant Contact and MailChimp, things like that, they all give you that data. So if you're not using one of those yet, you might want to move to one of those just to get that data of who's looking at it, what your open rates look like. Similarly, something like a Hootsuite to look at. But if you're not using anything other than LinkedIn, which LinkedIn is the most important, you can look directly at your LinkedIn analytics. So I would say LinkedIn. And then the thing that we've added as a PR firm that is my number one recommendation if you're going to invest is something like JD Supra. And so that's kind of like the core things, but you really can move forward with your Google Analytics, your email marketing platform, and LinkedIn. Like start with those. And then there are other free services like SEMrush and Surfer SEO that can do keyword research and SEO audits. You can do baselines for free with those tools as well. So that's kind of like where I would start if you're a small firm just getting started.
The one thing that I always would add to Andrea's list, which just by using these slides on a monthly basis, which is what we're recommending, that you take this collection of slides and use it as the agenda for your monthly meeting. The one thing that we would always add, and that's not what this particular slide you're looking at is about, but is anecdotal evidence, both asking what they would like and then asking your attorneys and even clients what they've received and what worked. But when you all are getting together as a team to fill out these slides, you're asking each other that. So just know you are tackling the anecdotal research as well by just getting together. And it will inspire you. We do provide clients with the opportunity to send, say, a quarterly email to everyone who's participated in a PR program to ask if they had gotten any feedback from the work that they had done there, whether they were interviews and features or bylines or something else. But anecdotal is super important to add to Andrea's list. Here, obviously, market research is bigger than clients. It's a lot of other folks. And here's that list for you to keep in mind. These people are going to help you in your sales process, and they're going to help you refine your content strategy.
So now we're going to move into, we've done the market research, we've done the financial analysis, and hopefully you already have like sketched out some content ideas, and we're going to move into the campaign strategy and the creative and use all that information we gathered to build it.
Yeah, and this is something that is often sort of late in conversations. You sort of have a standing request from all of your attorneys to let you know what their clients are asking for, or tell you about a trend they're seeing, or a new regulation, or a new decision. And you're probably doing the same thing, but just stepping back a tiny bit to the SEO research. This isn't something you're going to be able to continually do in most departments unless you have a digital person assigned. But a periodic SEO sort of review is really important. You could include it in your content narrative forms as you're writing pieces, and maybe it will ping you to sort of try to throw in keywords or refer back to the studies that you've conducted. But here's the different parameters that you could both audit your SEO, and then you could use some other tech tools to kind of help you refine that and set it in place. Every time you do a new campaign, it's important to go through this exercise. And then it's important to sort of track and see, over time, again, just a periodic revisit to it. And so we just wanted you to have this worksheet. And you can certainly track some of the results off to the right, but it is the baseline tool. Okay, so then, I've probably sort of heard me say the word campaign a few times. The top of this is really more used when we are doing client selection or when we're dealing with crisis. But we wanted you to sort of have that too because it was available on this worksheet and we didn't want to take it off. Um, but it does help if you sort of understand a broad mission. Let's say your firm has a strategic plan that could go at the top of this, and it could be, we want to grow in certain markets or we want to grow these new industries. At different firms I've been at and clients that I've worked with, knowing that can be so helpful. We just had a call with a CEO this last week, and it was talking about a strategic plan, and it was so incredible to sort of be reminded of what the focus areas that they had researched and the focus areas that had developed through the new sort of 1 year later conversation we were having. And so even the audiences had changed. Um, the one that's really, a couple that are really important to sort of say here is audience needs. When you're writing content, you are certainly providing content. It makes obvious that you're providing content they can use, but individuals often have a personal need as well. So if you, like I said earlier, if you want to offer sort of a content program or content campaign for them to help their legal department, that's solving a personal need. And so it isn't just necessarily about expanding the business or driving new business, but responding to other needs as well to your audience. Then with the channels and tactics, maybe they have internal channels which your content can be populated on. So we've had clients who have gone from, say, an article for the restaurant industry that went in a restaurant trade publication that then became something that was published in a client's franchisee newsletter. And another example is if you represent associations or serve in associations, if you can get into their channels, which are often private and off, not available in our database or available, worldwide, the Wall Street Journal is not as important as being in those interesting, unique channels.
So here you have your content calendar. So when we did this presentation live and in person, we actually did an activity and we actually built a content calendar together. And so what I would encourage you to do is to challenge yourself, to do a little bit of research, and then to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to take 30 minutes. I'm not going to overthink it. And I'm going to sketch out 6 months. Like, really challenge yourself. I read something yesterday. It said the longer we go without engaging a task, the more time, effort, and pain our brain thinks it'll take. And that really resonated with me. And so, really it quickly start to sketch this out, and then you can refine it over time. But this is where all those ideas you gathered in your research, you plug them in here, and it starts to become the driver of your content going forward.
Okay, so this infographic, you could use if you wanted to sort of show your clients, your attorneys, all the different things that you can do for them. This is just another way to sort of show them the amazing things you're able to produce for them. Really, this is our halfway marker, but we just wanted to sort of remind you of all of those tactics and, as a way to sort of present to them. And now we're going to sort of go through each of those on these next couple of slides. All right. So, we've mentioned a couple of these earlier today. One of the easiest ways to do this sort of content distribution integrated with business development is to subscribe or sign up for one of the services below on the left. And there are others. The distribution ones at the top, I mean, they help you do the distribution in a way that gives you more immediate data. In the tech stack, there's a lot of software um, folks, friends of ours that are really moving as quickly as they can to build up these integrations for you. We sort of like to track over time changes. And so we just, some very simple sort of, out and in kind of form here, where you can sort of track whether it's activity or increased readership or whatever. And I will say that the services, all of the technology services typically offer help. They have amazing folks who will help you refine and do a better job. They'll tell you about utilization in terms of, do I need a three-point takeaway at the top of my pieces to get better readership, work on my headlines or whatever. They have great data to give you to improve your data. So that's really good to sort of say about all them.
And then obviously your own email distribution, you want to look at what is resonating with your readers, or what is getting the best open rates and the best reader rates. When I was in house, we looked a lot at of the stats around the timing of the sends, so people could know when was the best time to send it. But I think what we're really saying here is, like, really look at what content is resonating. What do people want to hear about? And that can help shape the types of content you're distributing. So one of the things that we did is, people really wanted to hear about, in the tax world, tax litigation that was going on. That was like the most popular of our content. And so we ended up, creating a regular tracker of tax litigation and then publishing that on a regular basis, that helped, drive the type of content we were creating going forward.
But Andrea, before you go on from this, I do want to say the connection point for what we're doing, and what would be happening if we were in a weekly meeting all together, excuse me, a monthly meeting all together. This topic column in the center, we would be circling things there that we're working. So in your email distribution analysis on this page, Andrea would say, Dave, the topic of whatever got a click-through rate of 70%. And so I've put that, she would have probably highlighted that for the group. And then I would have said, okay, great. Let me go back to my financial analysis and say that matches with what the financial analysis says on that particular topic. And then Andrea would say, yeah, what's interesting is that it's actually also working on JD Super as well. So what's our analysis and decision at that point? It's to pump out another piece on that exact same topic and drive more attention to that, or make that more available to our different readers. Or maybe we haven't done it on a different channel. And so somebody else who's about to give a report on, the website, they might say, well, in their mind, and, save it for when they're doing their website slide, which is coming up in a minute, I'm going to put something on the website about that, or I'm going to make that more prominent on the website. And so what we're doing in this monthly meeting by going through these slides is together circling through lines, that we can then refine our strategy or continue our strategy or end our strategy, even perhaps is most important. So just wanted to say it there.
It's a really good point. Thank you for adding on to that.
Yeah.
And then similarly, yes, you're going to look at, what is driving the direct searches on your website. What are the SEO terms? Where are the external referrals coming from? Your social, what's resonating on social. So again, like Dave just said, you're comparing and noticing what is of most interest and leaning in to those topics and those content pieces, and finding more ways to get that content to a wider audience and directly to your target audience as well. So you want to do both. So one of the questions we had come in was from one of the webinar attendees, was they were curious about what tools are available or what processes firms have implemented to quickly collect and synthesize all of these analytics from discrete sources, as you've seen here, to deliver something meaningful and actionable. For example, if I have a blog post that has gone up on our website, out on social media, sent to clients via email, picked up by content aggregators like Lexology and JDS, how can I quickly and easily collect meaningful analytics from across each of these platforms? So this is the challenge, and we don't have a single tech solution that's doing that yet. That's why we've developed this process. And so it is gathering from the different sources and putting it into one place. But we do know that a lot of tech platforms are trying to solve for this. We just haven't seen the solution yet. So that's why we actually came up with this process, so it could bring and drive actionable steps moving forward. Dave, anything to add on that?
No. So, oh, go ahead.
I think this is you on website searches.
Oh, okay. Well, really not much more to say here, except what the bridge to the next slide is that one of the most exciting things to do on websites is to, and from a PR and external comms perspective, is to do data and surveys, basically news creation. And when you have news creation, you can create sort of download pages on websites, and you can drive traffic to your website from LinkedIn and all the other places. And when you see those external referrers kind of come in, you can sort of track all of that to do the initial data. And then the data on the click-throughs and the downloads can be really exciting. This is the fun stuff on PR about creating, surveys. I'll just say we've had clients do partner surveys with ALM, spending $50,000. We've had firms spend $50,000 a year doing their own surveys. But you don't have to necessarily do that. We have an accounting firm that sort of analyzes publicly available data every year and gets in the Wall Street Journal every year as well with that data. You can do webinar viewer polls. You can do presentation audience polling on the left. You can see those are both very inexpensive. They literally cost nothing and then can be turned into great campaigns that are unique and new sources of information for your clients. And the clients are participating in those. We could basically say that, if you have a CEO event, if you have any kind of risk presentation coming up, definitely jump on it for those. Um, and our own data on downloads and stuff is just incredibly strong. And all of our clients would say the same thing. So news creation is just super valuable. Okay, so obviously paid content, paid media. Um, we recommend folks do this more often than you probably imagine. Number one, it builds relationships with outlets and publications. You can have breakthrough in your ROI there. Number two, sometimes you just can't get things unless you pay for them in certain places. It's everything from creating content. Years ago, when I was at King and Spalding, we created roundtables with general counsel, three general counsel and two attorneys, and published those in ALM. We also did the same thing for some of the biz journals. It wasn't that expensive, and we had 100% control, which the firm wanted that 100% control. But they wanted to be in the right places, and it was expensive, but we did it. The other thing we did at that firm, which was actually not expensive at all, was an ad campaign and a content campaign in Hospital Industry Association newsletters. It was very inexpensive and it covered 6 states. One of the most exciting content things I was ever involved in terms of results, because we ended up owning those markets. We have friends doing stuff with the Wall Street Journal, and it's just something that you should consider. It can be very expensive. Speaking engagements for some of the high publications can cross into $175,000, but you don't have to spend that kind of money. Just think creatively.
And then, of course, you want to look at the results of your PR efforts. What's resonating with the news media? Where are you actually getting placements? And where are you hitting brick walls so you can move on to new things?
Really, we can just pop right through this one. We're just reminding you of the overall picture. On PRBD and integration, I'll just give you some real basic downloads looking at the clock. We have a list of something like 82 ways to do this integration. We're happy to send it to anybody that would want it. It was presented with Ryan King and one other person a couple years ago at the LMA National Conference. With regard to this, like I said earlier, sometimes clients will do 100 target names. Sometimes they'll do 6 target names. And it literally is the greatest, most exciting kind of sales effort, which truly is requires a monthly meeting. For one of the accounting firms we used to represent, we literally would sit in the room with the partners and go name by name by name every single month. And that's what it takes to make progress. Over a couple year period, the firm had added something like 50 professionals. It really, really does work to have these monthly meetings. And it goes like this. Next up, client name, A. How many times did we touch them this month? Any feedback on that? Did they open the emails? Did they respond to you on social? Oh, no, or yes. All right. Hey, PR team, what can you do to generate something else for them? It's literally that simple, and you're just pushing people down the sales funnel. I don't know, Andrea, that was super fast, but
No, that's perfect. And I think this goes also with the next slide, but I was just going to mention that, it's also the stickiness of the client. And so we were working with a client recently that had a new client of theirs, and they did some joint media together, which was beneficial. But then actually coming out of that, they got a direct inquiry from that joint PR that they did together. They got a direct inquiry from a potential client. So, I mean, like, I think that, linking the two things together really can help drive results.
yeah, and content really is your give before get sales proposition, which is what you want to be. You want to be helpful. It's the best sales strategy in professional services. And moving on to the anecdotal.
Yeah, so Dave mentioned this earlier, but really it is important to capture your anecdotal feedback. And so creating a standard way to capture that is really important. I mean, the bottom line is legal services are, it's still a trust. Your clients are still coming to you because they trust you. And so, that anecdotal collection of information is important, and just making sure you have a standard way to capture it and record it so that you're assessing it when you're looking at your overall information and in your analysis.
Yeah, and the one that was there again, bringing it back to the start of the oh, wait, Andrea, this is you.
Oh, I just finished. Sorry.
Oh,
Well,
okay. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that, this adjust the new client or matter intake form on that one was harking back to the beginning of the presentation.
and then, benchmarking against competitors. This is important. Lots of different ways to do that. We just did a large market research case for an international law firm, and primarily used just secondary online research to do that. And I will say there are a lot of great tools out there now that can help you do this, and then use AI to help distill that from your initial secondary research that you're doing independently. So lots of good tools to help measure that.
And the reason that this is super important is that if you've been doing campaigns and you've measured all those little things along these different slides that we've given you, you can see a broad impact by looking at these. So, for example, let's say you were doing something related to sports and NILs. You would see your share of voice grow as you continue to sort of hammer away month after month at that. You could see your domain authority grow as you sort of continue to produce more original content and things like that. And so, if you have both the specific data and you have the big picture, you can use this page as well as financial analysis with your financial team. Yeah, and this last two pages are actually really just here to show you if you didn't want to sort of flip back and forth through these slides, this is an example of how you could do an analysis on one page. And let's just say it says 4 campaigns because the next slide in the deck is the exact same thing. But basically, you're putting in the campaign-based information here, which is in summary form. It just gives you a method and a means to do that. It's really good to sort of look at the bottom of this. The last two things, both anecdotal with the mind, heart, and gut. We always say data's great, but you've got to trust yourself and you got to make decisions. And usually you're right. And if you're not right, you're just testing and you can switch. So it's okay to test content and change your strategy later. And then the next thing is to sort of show at the bottom, we're updating a piece of content and resending it back out because it's doing so well. We're repurposing those content. I think it might have been Ross Fishman. It was 4 times for a single piece of content. And maybe we're making some headway with our target list business development, and we're actually recording financial improvements or new matters. So just a worksheet for you. Okay, I think that's it,
Well,
Andrea.
we really appreciate you all being here today. If you have any questions, please feel free. We have a couple minutes. You could put those in the chat. We're also happy to continue the discussion offline. Please feel free to connect with us on LinkedIn or send us an email, whatever is best. We do have a couple more webinars already scheduled. So July 16th, we're doing a webinar with Ty West, the editor-in-chief of the playbook for the American City Business Journals. And then in September, we're hosting one with the American Lawyer Business of Law team. So we really appreciate it. And I'll just double check that we don't have any questions that have come in. And like I said, we're happy to, like I said, continue the conversation offline. And thank you so much.
Thank you.